Hello and welcome to Automate Office Work, the show that helps you get started with automating your office work. My name is Justin. I'm your host. I am an ex-corporate lawyer. I worked for 10 years doing corporate law, and doing my work, I started automating everything because I had computer and language skills that I applied. And now I am here to offer you the kind of podcast that I was looking for and that just didn't exist. So this is a weekly live show on LinkedIn that is also recorded for YouTube and as an audio only podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Justin Turman, Turman. We're going to be going for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then I'll open it up to the discussion for anyone in our live audience. I can give you some tailored help exactly how you need it. Today's topic is all about processes. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the elements that make up a process. All right. And you can find this article on my website, automateofficework.com/lessons/processes. If you go to my website, there are a bunch of articles and you can scroll all the way down. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually lessons/process. I'm going to click on this, show you a little bit. There's an entire article here if you would prefer to read at your own leisure. Otherwise, just sit back and listen. I'm going to pull up. I have a PowerPoint presentation. For those of you who are watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, you do have the visuals. For those of you who are audio only, I will try my best to paint a picture with words so you don't have to watch. You can do other things while you're listening. All right. And it looks like it wants to play the slideshow on another monitor. I'll just do it like this then. All right, so I've got this PowerPoint presentation. Computers automate processes. What is a process? All right, we're going to be talking all about processes today. So this is a really nice visual. Process involves many people often. I've got an image here. It shows kind of an office setup, and there are these circles, like cycles of arrows that go around and around, and then it goes to another cycle of arrows, kind of like a figure eight, if you can imagine that in your mind. And in the middle of each of these cycles is various people, systems. They're doing things, they're reviewing, they're processing the work as it goes around in their workflow. And then it goes back to the previous person, or it goes on to the next step. It goes through several of these. There's like a data repository. There is some bars and graphs. There's people that are looking at the output of this. And then finally, there is a final output, and it looks like it goes to some kind of a salesperson carrying a briefcase, and they are raising their money and increasing their revenues. All right, so we are doing things for an output. We want to get something from our process. Okay, and along the bottom of this image, it says work must be structured as a process. Okay, so computers work in terms of processes. If you really want the computers to do your work, especially to the point of automating them, we have to structure our work as a process. Okay, each one of these circles, there's a beginning, there's some kind of stuff being done in the middle, and then the end is when you pass it off to the next person to do their thing. Okay, we can link several of these together. Um, but in isolation, we call it a process. Okay. Next slide. Process is at the core of everything we do. And I just have a little graphic here. It shows a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every process has to have a start. We're not just going to be, I don't know, starting the process whenever. We need to have a defined time when it starts, as well as a defined time when it ends. And then all of the stuff in the middle, it can get quite complex. Okay, but boiling it down, there's just stuff that we do in the middle of the processing. Okay, the next slide, the keys to making a good process. So these are the six elements that I have identified that make up any process. So when you're sitting down with your team and or even with yourself and you just think, well, what is my process? A lot of people don't have a sense of what goes into a process. They just kind of think, well, I'm going to wave my hand here and we're going to say there's a process around this now, or the CEO says we have to put a process around this. Well, without actually knowing what that means, maybe they think like, oh, we just wrote the word process down. And no, you actually need to define all of these elements. Okay. The first of the six elements, and I'll just name them quickly then, and then I'll go over them briefly. The first element is the trigger. The trigger. The next second element is the actor. Actor. The third part is your inputs. The inputs that go into your process. The fourth part is processing. And there's a link to this that goes to outsourcing. So your processing and your outsourcing are very much intertwined. Okay. You might, in the middle of your processing, need to send something out for outsourcing that you need. It comes back, and then you're using that in your process. And then finally, after your processing and your outsourcing, we go to the output stage. And the output stage is your sixth and final one. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these briefly. I'm going to give a really nice example after this. So then we're going to go into more detail. But just very briefly, the trigger, and I guess I hope it's kind of obvious, you need a trigger when your process is going to start. What is your trigger? Is there an event? Does somebody call you? Is it the first day of the month, and on the first day of the month we have to go do inventory. That's so you've got a timing and you've got events. You might even include like manual. You might think like, oh, whenever I think of something, I'm going to go do it manually. Well, I would also caution you, like, don't just rely on you thinking. You need to write it down. Like, what are the events that trigger this? The second part, the actor. Okay, you need to have your actor defined because especially if you're working in like a team and you say, well, everybody does everything. Well, you know what they say, that decreases the chances. If everybody's doing everything, then probably nobody's doing nothing. So it's a good idea to have all of your actors defined. Even if you do have just a list of a group of people, well, who determines which person is assigned the task? Maybe you have a person who's kind of the intake person, and they divvy up all the tasks. Okay. You might also have actors that are not people. You might say like, well, we have a bot or we have a system that just automatically goes and does it, and that's great. But you just need to have define who's the actor and who's doing it. Okay. The third piece, inputs. Inputs, right? So you need certain things when something is being triggered for work, right? Like me as a lawyer, I didn't just wake up and go create a contract. No, somebody would alert me that I needed to do work, and guess what? They had to give me the details, all the details that I needed. So you might give them like a form or a menu, and you guide them down. Otherwise, you're just going to have a back and forth conversation, right? So it's really good to plan these out in advance so that you can avoid these conversations that go for weeks on end. Just get all the inputs that you need up front, okay? The fourth part is the processing. Processing looks different based on what kind of work you're doing. We're going to be doing a bakery example, and your processing, and it's basically your recipe, your equipment. Okay. For me as a lawyer, my processing, it was more like using my legal education. Maybe yeah, maybe I had some templates and some guidance and these kinds of things. Okay. But also, outsourcing is often needed, right? As a lawyer inside a company, this might be a secret for a lot of people, but we used outside law firms quite a bit when we didn't have the expertise because we did the easier, the more general stuff. If there was something very specific that was outside of my skill set, we would outsource that. And the same with a bakery. A bakery doesn't have absolutely everything. They're going to have to go to the grocery store. Okay. So think of that in terms of your own work as well. What are you processing? What are you outsourcing? And then how do those kind of connect with each other? And the very last thing is the output. The output, you could say, is probably the most important thing, because if you're not producing something and giving it back to your customer or whoever triggered you to do the work, what was the point of doing this work, right? So think about your output, and you might actually think about your output at the very beginning. What do you want to end up having at the very, very end? And then you work your way backwards. You might think, like if you are doing something that doesn't add value to your output at the very, very end, you might even consider not doing it, right? Because that's just wasted effort. And value is determined in the eyes of the customer. I always give an example of like creating a really, really nice watch for a customer, right? You can do all this like handcrafted, really intricate work on the inside of the watch where they never see. Does the customer actually know about this value, right? And the same thing with baking a cake or me working on contracts as a lawyer. If you're doing something that is just wasting your time and you think, well, it's nice to do this in a manual, handcrafted way that doesn't have any impact at the end, right? Or another example is like using organic carrots in a carrot cake, right? If the customer just asked for a carrot cake and you say, let's go get organic carrots, make them extra special. Let's even grow them ourselves in the garden out back. If the customer didn't ask for it, the customer doesn't know it, the customer doesn't perceive this value, then the value basically doesn't exist. And you need to stop doing this. So think about that as you're creating your processes and your outputs. All right. And as I promised, we're going to do a bakery example. It says, make your process a piece of cake. So we're going to go through an entire process of getting an order from a customer and baking a cake for them. All right. So the very first thing is the trigger. The trigger for making cakes. What are the triggers for making cakes? And hint, there are at least two triggers that I've come up with for making cakes. Maybe take a second, pause if you're not watching this live. What are the triggers for making cakes? Okay, so I can think of two triggers. The very first one, and maybe the simplest, that doesn't even involve a customer. It's, imagine you're a baker, you wake up, you go to the bakery, and what's the first thing that you should be doing? You need to count. You need to make an inventory of the cakes that you already do have. Maybe you have some standard cakes that people can come in and just buy off the shelf. So you need to count, how many chocolate cakes do we have? We have 5. Okay, how many do we need to have on hand? We need 10. Okay, so let's make 5. So you go and make your 5. So that's the first trigger. The second trigger is when a customer asks for a custom order. Okay, so that's the second trigger, custom cake with a custom order. And we're going to go along this route, custom cake with custom order for the rest of the example. Okay, the second element is the actor. So how can a customer place an order? You need to have people and systems in place to be able to capture the customer's order. And I've got at least 3 here, 3 ways for the customer to reach out to the bakery. The very first one is by phone. So you need to have a phone number. You need to have somebody or something. You could even have like a chat bot if you want, if it could like do some speaking and listening. But somebody needs to be available to pick up that phone. The second way to make an order is through a website or an app. So you need to have a website available. Okay. The third one is when they come in person. So you need to have a physical place so that they can come to. You need to have a door. You need to have a doorbell. You need to have then an employee that is there at the counter that can greet them and take their order. So these are the 3 different actors that I have: phone, website, and a physical person. Oh, a little extra down here. It says extra. What are the customer's triggers for ordering a cake? So remember that office setup? Like we're focused that we're in the little circle of the bakery. Well, the person that's coming to you, also has their own triggers. Maybe they have a birthday coming up. And so they're like, oh, I need to make a birthday party for somebody. And then they have different inputs that go into theirs. They have to do all kinds of stuff. But the cake is just one part. And then the cake is being outsourced to you, right? So their process, in the middle of their process, it is then starting a process for you. So if you're thinking about marketing and things, you might think about like what are the triggers for the customers to reach out to me? Maybe do some advertising. Maybe have like an email repository, a whole bunch of email addresses, and you know their birthdays. And then you can say like the week before, like we know your birthday is coming up. How about preparing by ordering a delicious cake from us? So think about this even in your own work. People are not always just focused on your process. They're in the middle of their own process, and then think about how to make their process seamlessly connect to yours. Give them these interfaces, phone, website, and personal. Make your process the best you can make it. Okay, so when they reach out through these three different interfaces, the next part is input. Okay, what kind of conversation are we going to have with this person to get the data points that we need? And I have on my screen, it is an example menu, or it's a cake order form. We have a place for the order date. We have the promise date. We need customer info like their name, email, phone, and address. We need details about the order, like the flavor, filling, icing, the drawing on it, the shape. We also have delivery options. At the very end, we're going to have an output. How do we get the output back to them? Is there local drop off? Is there a local pickup? Or are we going to ship this through a third party? We also have payment options, cash, card, check, PayPal, other. And then we have the amount. We need to know the subtotal, the taxes, the cost of shipping, and the grand total. But no matter how the customer reaches out to us through the phone, the website, or the in-person order, the conversation is basically going to be the same. This is our script to get the exact data points. It also should give the customer, there should also be a menu so that the customer knows the different options of the flavors, the fillings, the icings. They need to know that they can ask for like a custom drawing or some kind of a writing on the cake. Okay. Um, and that comes to the outsourcing. Outsourcing, I've got a picture of some carrots here, and that's because I always use this example of organic carrots in the cake. So let's imagine your bakery just you usually provide one of the flavors is a carrot cake, and you have a special customer who is asking for special carrots. They want organic carrots. And the question is, will you will you put organic carrots into the cake? Do you have them on hand, right? How difficult is it for you to go get them? Is there a grocery store nearby that you'll just go get them and it's no problem? Or is this something like, I don't know, even more difficult? Maybe the customer wants you to grow the carrots from scratch out back, and this is just too difficult for you. Well, instead of having this conversation and thinking about it every time, it's a great idea to think of these things up front and then let the customer know. Maybe you say, "Oh, it's a hard no. No, we're not going to do this." Or you might say, if you have a custom request, bring your own ingredients with you. Bring those organic carrots with you. Yeah, we'll use them. Or you might say, we will move heaven and earth. I did this a lot as a lawyer working in a company. We treated our clients very, very special. Anything they wanted, we would give them. We called it white glove service. Okay. So think about this. Think about your outsourcing. Have it ready up front. The next part is the processing. And I have here, it says, let's start baking. This is why we went to bakery school, is to do the baking, right? All that other stuff, it's like administrative work. You want to make the work go so smoothly for your employees, for your team, that they can focus on what they do best. They can focus on giving the real value. Okay. So you need to make sure that your team has the right ingredients, the right equipment, the right culinary knowledge, the right recipes, the right procedures, the right dedicated staff. And when you have all of these things in place, the work goes so smoothly. You can make consistent outputs. You could even scale this up. Maybe we say, well, let's open up more bakeries, and they're going to have the exact same. It's going to be the exact same experience for all of your customers worldwide. Okay. So really focus on this part. Make sure your team is happy and that they know what they're doing. Okay. Everybody wants to know what they're doing at work and to feel good about their work. Okay. And then all the rest of the stuff, we are taking care of it so that they don't have to focus on the admin kind of stuff. Okay, the very last part is outputs. Okay, we've got a nice cake that we can deliver to the customer. We need to make sure that the connection is hard and fast. There's no way that we can miscommunicate and not deliver this cake. Okay. All right, so that's about 20 minutes in. Let's see if we've got any comments. Oh no. Oh no, it looks like I didn't do the sound. Okay, I'm gonna have to try that again. Well, we have it in the recording, and this recording will be available on YouTube as well as on audio podcast. Sorry about that, James. I will try to do my best next time. I guess I'm still learning how to do the live streaming on LinkedIn. All right, so I guess we do not have anybody who's listening. Sorry about that, everybody. Let's see, I do have another slide where we can talk a little bit about some extra stuff. Okay, these are the extras to think about when you're creating your process. The extras are interfaces, databases, and data flows. Okay, so interfaces, we talked about it a little bit. When you want to interact with somebody or like a customer, you need to provide an interface so that they can connect with you. If you want them to call you, you have to have a phone number. You have to have the phone line. You have to have somebody who can pick up the phone. That's an interface. You also need to have like a website. You have to have a physical person. All the ways that you want your customers or your clients to be interacting with you and your team, you need to set it up so that they can do it. Right. If you're complaining that everybody always emails me these random emails, they have no idea what they want, and then we have to go through weeks and weeks of back and forth conversation to figure out what they want. Guess what? It's not the customer's fault. It's on you. You're the one who has the power to change this. You can't just complain about it, especially if it's things that are in your power that you can control. Okay, so think about your interfaces. If like if you want your employee to do work on a computer, you might need to provide a computer to them, right? Give them the interface. How are they interacting with the data and the work? You need to provide the interface. Next is databases. A lot of times in our work, there's data being produced. You need to capture that data. Okay. Don't just think like, oh, well, it's going to be in random emails. No, email is not a store of data. You need to have a real repository where you can collect all these data points and then store them. And then you can do some metrics also, and you can analyze how are we doing? Is it going quickly? Are there things that we need to do to improve this? Okay. Databases are very, very important, and I will go over the basics of databases in a future episode. Okay, for sure. And the last thing is data flows. Okay, so data flows. Data moves from step to step, and you need to be able to capture it. You need to be able to process it, manage it. Maybe you get extra data points from somebody else. Maybe you have data points on hand inside your recipes, your templates. You process this all together and then they make an output. Your output then, remember the example about the cake. The customer has their own process. They're coming to you just for one piece of the birthday party. That's the cake. They also need to have friends. They also probably want other food, some games, some music, some activities. And so your output just becomes another input to them. Okay. And so this is all just one large flow. So think about your customers, I guess. Your end customer is getting a lot more than just from your team, possibly, right? Like when I was working in legal making sales contracts, a sales contract was only one thing that needed to be delivered to the end customer. They also needed the actual product that they were buying. But they needed a sales team. They needed a marketing team that was in the pipeline so that the customer knew like what was available. And there was like research and development for creating new products. All this stuff, it's just one big flow, and you are just one piece of it. I know if we come back to this office graphic, when you're in the trenches and you're just like in your cubicle or whatever, I know your work looks just like random. It looks like people are just coming to me at random times. I have no idea what they want or when they want it. I just kind of do stuff and then I respond back. Okay, this is not a good place to be in. This is reactionary. You don't know the patterns of when work is going to come to you, so it just feels like a random waterfall of chaos coming at you. Okay, but if you can lift up your perspective a little bit and look at the other groups that are involved, get a handle on how they do their work because they're coming to you to help them as an input to their work. So if you can look at their work and you say, hey, well, when you're doing this in your work, maybe we make a connection like a menu to your department. So then the work can come in a much organized way, right? So yeah, if while you're looking at your own processes, undoubtedly you're going to be looking at everybody else's as well. Look at the whole workflow chain. Okay. All right. So I think that's enough for today. Yeah, it's been a really great conversation. I hope that you all enjoy this and that you get great benefit from it. I'd like to invite anybody who would like to come on as a guest. If you are just starting in this, or even if you're a seasoned pro, come on, let's have a conversation and let's chat about how you got started and let's see if we can help other people that are on the same journey. I am offering my consulting services at automateofficework.com. You can come here. You can see my services I offer in consulting. We can have a chat. I offer custom solutions inside the Microsoft environment, and I can also run education for you and your team so that everybody grows together. If you would like to make a call with me, the button is there on the website. Also, I do offer free services during this time. I always try to have like 10 minutes left over so that anybody can come on and have the conversation with me. And let's have a discussion here. Let's just work through your process, map it out, and get you going onto a better, improved process. All right. So I'll see everybody later. I'll see you next week, next time. And with that, happy automating.